is what Tantric Sex is, baby.
I've had orgasms before where I've seen like colors.
Here
or
we
like
go. Here we go with the colors in the mouth. You have orgasms in your ears. Like you have orgasms everywhere.
In my mouth, I have, but like, yeah.
What? Like, I'm like, what?
Bitch, what I was trying to say is this situation got me so wet and so dry at the same time. Exactly.
What's up, bitches? Welcome back to another episode of So Wet, So Dry. I'm one of your hosts, Fiji, like the island, like the water. I'm really not with the drama, and I work in social media and marketing.
And my name is Autumn, like the season. I have an irrational fear of sensual, lovey-dovey sex, and I work in entertainment. If you guys are new here to So Wet, So Dry, what we do is we deep dive topics about sex, relationships, identity, all through the lens of pop culture, internet trends, and our community's experiences. We post polls for every single episode on our Instagram, So Wet, So Dry, the O's are zeros. So definitely follow us there to be a part of the conversation, join our community of confused pussies, all that. And whatever you guys are doing right now, please stop and subscribe, follow whatever platform you're on. If you've already done that, give us a like, a comment. It would literally mean so much to us.
Yes, ma'am. And today we are talking about tantric sex. Ooh. What is it? What happens during tantric sex? What are the goals of tantric sex? We're also going to share a lot of our listener stories and also different experiences that people have had online. But before we get into all of that, we're going to start the episode as we always do, talking about what we're so wet and so dry about in this very moment. So I will go first. I'm so wet just about the sex that I've been having, but not just that, also the fact that like my man's very supportive of my business, and I think it's because he has his own creative like business endeavors as well, and like Autumn and I are very supportive of each other. Like we have some really supportive friends in our lives, but like not everybody in my life is supportive, so it's just really nice to have someone who's fucking me who's also like for my business. So
no, totally. And it's also just like sometimes it's hard like for men to take women's business, you know, things seriously. And so it's just, that's great. I love it. He is supportive. We support him. We love it. So I'm so wet. Honestly, first of all, about how you look right now. You look so good, bitch. I love the outfit, the hair, the everything.
We match on accident, guys. We always fucking match.
Dude, it's too much. I know. We're both like, and black. Okay. So... but also we are pre-recording right now, but my sister's coming to visit me as you guys are listening to this. She's here, bitch, and super excited about that. We're 6 years apart, so I remember when she was 2 and I was 8, I was like, oh, I just want her to grow up. Like, I can't wait, because I knew that down the line, the age gap wouldn't matter as much.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, oh my God, we're actually going to like get drunk in LA together. It's going to be so fun. So, yeah, what about that?
Okay, vibes. Bitch. I wish I had a sister, dude. You're like my sister. But I'm so dry.
You are my sister.
You are. I'm so dry about mansplaining. I feel like I've been in a lot of situations with men that it's not just like something that comes up in conversation where it's like, oh, they're mansplaining it, but also like men just love to find something to explain and waste my time. Like, and it's usually when we're like collaborating on something or it's like some quick encounter with a man. I don't know, but men just love to like find some niche shit to talk your ear off about for 30 to 45 minutes. Like I don't have other shit to do. And I feel like I'm just sitting there like, oh yeah, cool. Oh yeah. Like saying that I understand to make it stop, and it does not stop.
So. I know. And I feel like they do it. It's like a confidence ego thing. Like they do it to make themselves feel good. It's never really to educate other people. It's just for them to like feel whatever. Yeah, I hate that. I'm so dry because currently right now I'm unemployed. Hopefully when this is out, I am employed, bitch. Okay. I know I will be, but we are pre-recording like I said. But anyways, when I first moved to LA, I worked for this influencer, quote unquote, if you even want to call her that. I was like her personal assistant. I don't really know like what she does now, but back then it was kind of just like social media. I don't really know. So, but anyways, we like didn't really end in a good situation. I stopped working for her, like never spoke. It was kind of like, I don't fuck with you type vibes.
Yeah.
But she messages me yesterday about like, oh, like, how are you? I have a remote job opportunity. And at first I was like, okay, like, what's the job? Like, I'm down to entertain it. And she's like, it's an OnlyFans manager. It's an OnlyFans manager for other creators. And like, when we worked together, I did OnlyFans. Mind you, that was like over 3 years ago now. I don't do OnlyFans.
And did she know that you did OnlyFans?
I don't know anything. But I don't do it anymore. And it's like, I don't want to be an OnlyFans manager. Like, if I'm going to do that, it's going to be for myself. I don't want to do it for someone else. So it's just like, you know, she knows that I'm like into photography and writing and all this other stuff. And it's like, of course, that's the job she brings to me.
Yeah.
Because I remember her low-key being weird about me doing OnlyFans. Like a little bit, like a little stigma.
Yeah.
You know, so I was just like, it just pissed me off. So I'm dry about that. But I think it's funny because I'm like, I'm literally doing so much better. Like,
you know, like, your worth.
I've made a great name for myself, you know, like actually worked on real shows, not like your fake reality life of a show.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So let's get into this topic. As Fiji said, we're talking about tantric sex this week, okay? And to kind of kick it off, we wanted to see like what you guys were at with your sex life, if you were bored or whatnot. So we asked you guys a poll. Are you bored with the type of sex you've been having? And 57% said not bored, but I always want to try something new. 26% said yes, LOL. And then 17% said no, I'm happy with what I got going on.
Damn, so most people are open to something new or they're bored. Actually, on my Instagram, it was, I think, the majority that said yes, they're bored. And I was really surprised. I was like, damn, that's kind of sad. But at the same time, that's why you listen to this podcast, you know, to learn more.
I mean, this is the answer we wanted. It's that you want to try something new because that's this whole episode. We're talking about like a new type of sex that is very much in contrast with the like hit it and quit it situation we got going on. Like this shit can change your life. So let's fucking get into it. So first we want to define Tantra, which is what the whole thing, you know, derives from. Tantra is an ancient spiritual practice that involves exploring your personal identity. It's meant for a person to experience the truth and reality of oneself and the world. In simpler terms, Tantra is a pleasure-centric practice that encourages self-exploration and mindfulness. It's similar to meditation and can have benefits both in and out of the bedroom.
Ooh, we love this.
Right, and I didn't know, you know, what Tantra was. I didn't know what Tantric sex was going into this, so it's really, really cool. But also this dates back as far as AD 500 to 1500.
Wow.
I remember in like history textbooks when they got into the AD shit, I was like, nah, bro, why are we still learning about this? Like
Mesopotamia and shit.
I'm like, yeah. But anyway, so it's been along for a long time. Tantra is a philosophy and set of practices that developed in India, taking its name from sacred instructional texts that describe rituals for invoking all-powerful deities. Tantra begins on the margins of society among devotees of the Hindu god Shiva, destroyer of the universe, and Shakti, the universe's all-pervasive force. By the 700s, the Tantras are being studied in Hindu and Buddhist monasteries across India. In Sanskrit, the word Tantra means woven together. People who practice Buddhist and Hindu meditation may also practice Tantric sex as a way to weave the physical with the spiritual. It refers to weaving together or uniting the masculine and feminine forces within all of us, heaven and earth, the human body, with the transcendent collapsing the polarities. So, I mean, it's pretty much on brand, bitch. I mean, I'm like, this is so cool. Like, I love, like, we are all about, you know, talking about meaningful sex and, like, how, you know, sex positivity. And so it's like, I'm embarrassed it took me this long to know about this. And I've kind of dabbled in it without even knowing it. And I think that's true for a lot of people as well. But no, and I think it's beautiful and very important to know, like, where this comes from. You know, we definitely want that to be clear. And yeah, I just think it's so beautiful.
Yeah, the part where it's like weaved together the physical and the spiritual literally makes my pussy so wet. Like that just because, I kind of like the sensual, like connecting sex and the whole idea of like the masculine and feminine forces between both of you that are within both of you. So this is not like just for, cis men, cis women, because we all have masculine and feminine traits. Like it's, merging them as what, like, I'm excited. This is so cute.
I know. It's so good. So yeah, we know what Tantra is, where it comes from, how long it's been here. Let's now define tantric sex specifically, because there's a whole world of Tantra. There's, yoga and all this other stuff, but we want to talk specifically about tantric sex for this episode.
So first we asked you guys, do you know what tantric sex is? And 66% of y'all said no, and 34% said yes. And I did kind of know what it was because I had watched a documentary. I think it was either Netflix or Hulu. I want to say it was the Cara Delevingne documentary, but I feel like it's not. It was something about sex where each episode was like exploring something new. And okay. I remember they were like sitting across from each other, and that was like it. Like it was like eye contact and like moving energy. Right. And I was like interested, but it seemed very, very intimate at the same time. So like kind of iffy. But did you know about it before?
I did not know about it before. I didn't know what it was when you recommended that we do this episode. But I feel like, I genuinely had no idea what it was. So I'm aligned with the audience. But now I will forever know what it was because, we researched a lot about it. So basically at the end of the day, like tantric sex can be done solo and with a partner. We're going to mostly talk about tantric sex with a partner. But I think it's interesting, this can be a masturbating situation as well. So I think that's really cool too.
I feel like just real quick, I feel like I don't know as much if I've done it with
you
a partner.
Definitely have done tantric sex solo,
masturbating. Like I feel like that's low key my shit. Like
you like always do.
Like I be having my other fantasies, like whatever, but like I do like if I feel like I have a spiritual blockage because I'm very into meditation, like I'm very into centering my mind, and like sometimes when I would meditate, I would like get horny, and not horny in the way where I'm like thinking about like some crazy shit, but just like I feel spiritual energy like in my pussy. And I found it like be very healing to like masturbate sometimes like low key to a meditation and like think through like removing energy and clearing blocks. Like, yeah.
You've done that?
Yes.
Can you teach me? I don't know how to do that.
I would say that honestly, for me, it really wasn't like something I sat down and intended to do, though I'd like want to try. Like I'm sure there's like meditations that are specifically for like masturbating. But
it was
kind
of just like
yeah, like it would just be when I was going to sleep, like listening to either meditation like to fall asleep or meditation for music. And I feel like for me, it's because like my mind's like constantly going all the time that I have a hard time like concentrating or masturbating or like getting into the zone. So I feel like when I would go to sleep and my mind is like calm and I'm in my center, like my body's relaxed and I can like feel myself more. And it's just like, like let me pleasure myself,
Yeah.
So
I love that. I feel like a lot of people can relate to like not being able to get in the zone right away and stuff. So this can be like a really cool way to not only get in that zone, but all the zones. One of the definitions that we found online says the simplest explanation of tantric intimacy or tantric sex is that it's about bringing the fire of your sexual energy, passion, and desires into alignment with your heart, your spirit, and a sense of goodness in your life. When these forces come into balance and harmony, the sparks of interpersonal magic really start flying and sex becomes something healing, empowering, transcendent, and profoundly beautiful. Like inspiring, right?
No, that's so real. And like honestly, I think the best sex that I've had has been like that. And that doesn't necessarily mean, because I think like we just had an episode come out about fucking first, and we got a lot of hate because people are like, oh, you can build a sexual connection, like you're sluts, you're whores, whatever. And like I feel like you can, right. Is it probably better and easier to have like tantric sex with someone that you love? Yeah, but I think that I've had spiritual sexual experiences with people that were one night stands just because of the way that like the lack of anxiety going into it and also like the way things meshed. So, like I think it's not like one of those things where it's like, oh, sex should only be sacred and only be with one person and someone that you love. Like, I think there's the opportunity to do it with someone that's just like a one-time thing as well, though it's like harder,
Interesting. That definitely is somewhat of a hot take too.
Right.
I feel like, but I agree. And I think emphasis on that you're going into it low anxiety. So you can really just open up, and maybe it's like this one night stand as someone you're like, you feel comfortable with, and just because you're not going to date, like, it can definitely happen. I feel like, especially in the queer community, like that's happened to me for sure, like by accident.
Yeah.
Because women are just magical. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also like for me, if I'm going to fuck someone, like if I'm not, like if they're not coming to me and being like OD, if I let my anxiety down, I want to be sensual because like I don't give a fuck if I love you or not, but in this moment, I love you. You know what I'm saying? Like we're gonna fuck, like we love each other.
Right.
So
I love that.
Okay, so another definition that we found said that tantric sex is a whole new way of being in sexual connection that allows you to access deeper levels of feeling, sensation, and energy, and ultimately more of who you are. This path is simple but not profound. It's about wholeheartedly celebrating the sacredness of our bodies and desires while bringing a quality of mindful awareness to the shared expression of pleasure. It can help you release shame, trauma, and blocks around sex, unleashing the transformative power of your erotic energy and leading you to some of the most soul-shattering orgasms ever.
I know. And it's like, it's very clear that the orgasm is not, the end goal with tantric sex. It says that everywhere in my research, but it's more like a tool used, you know what I mean? Like along the way. And it can lead to some soul shattering orgasms that are not your traditional orgasm, and they're like a spiritual orgasm. So, but yeah, it's really beautiful. And we were really interested on if you guys have ever done this, our listeners. So the next poll we asked is, have you ever practiced tantric sex? And the majority did say no. 78% said no, they haven't. And 22% said yes, they have. And again, we said this at the beginning, but I think a lot of us might have done bits and pieces of this sort of spiritual connection, transfer of energy. Maybe it wasn't the full tantric sex, but I think we've all done some types of things when it comes to sensual sex, but it's kind of cool that a lot of you guys haven't, because hopefully after this episode, you'll, want to try it. So,
well, you've kind of done it like more on the like breathing together side and stuff.
Yeah. I remember because my ex-boyfriend, he like went, like he was kind of like me, where like he had these like kicks, and he was on a spiritual kick one day, and he like woke me up in the morning. He's always up and at him at 8 a.m. and I'm like sleeping till noon, but he woke me up and he was like, okay, like sit up, like we're like, he's like dominating me. No, he's like, okay, sit up. We're going to do some like breathing or whatever. And we just had our hands on each other's hearts. Like I had my hand on his, he had his hand on mine. And we just breathed and tried to get to a place where like we were breathing together without saying anything. So it was really cool. But it wasn't sexual. It was kind of more, or it didn't feel sexual at least. It was more just about like we're
connection,
baby.
Yeah, I feel like the times that because I answered no, but I didn't think of like masturbation, which I think I definitely have. But the times, this is what I was talking about earlier, where I didn't put it into the outline or research or whatever, but I want to ask you guys, because the only times I can think of like having any sort of tantric sex was when I was tripping or on drugs. And I'm talking like ecstasy, Molly, acid, and shrooms. And there was like a phase of my time when I was with my ex where I was doing a lot of like that stuff. Don't promote drug use, guys. I was using it like way too much. But I think I started to also associate him with the feeling of like Molly, because like if you've ever done Molly or ecstasy before, you feel like very like amazing, like connected, like you're just like feeling the same thing. When you're tripping, you're seeing the same colors, like you feel like you're like leaving your body.
It's a Yeah.
Yeah, and I did have like bad trips and like parts during that as well, where I'm like, I wouldn't say that we like ascended together like and like completely, but there were definitely like I felt like some of those, it was like spiritual experiences where it was like energy moving and stuff.
Yeah.
But I want to stress that I feel like on drugs, it's not the same thing. So if you guys, what do you think? Let me fucking know.
Yeah, it's definitely not the same thing, but it is crazy that you brought it up because definitely having sex on ecstasy and Molly is a different type of sex for sure.
Yeah.
And it can be really intense. And again, we don't promote doing it. We're not like, yeah, it's so good. I mean, it is, but I still don't promote you guys to do it. But I'm curious to see what you guys think too.
So next we asked you guys, if you've never done it, are you interested in trying it with the right person? And the majority of you guys, at 88%, said yes, definitely. Only 9% said nah, I like to keep sex separate from my spirituality. 3% said maybe, I'm not too sure. And 0% said too intense for me, which is really cool.
Yeah, I think it's awesome because I definitely want to try it with the right person, but I do think it's like really intense, and especially like I'm someone that doesn't have a lot of sensual sex, and for a reason. I'm scared of it. I feel like it's too intense for me. That's what I feel like. But I'm not at the point where I don't want to try this. I think it used to be a lot worse than it is now. I've also been like celibate for a minute, so I don't really know, honestly, like what's good. So, but yeah, I think that's really good that a lot of you guys don't feel like it's too intense, because it definitely doesn't need to be. I mean, there's levels to everything, so it's like you got to start somewhere. I don't think you're gonna do it for the first time and like, see the light. It takes a while. It takes practice. So
yeah,
just like meditation in general.
Yeah, and you got to be comfortable because, like, especially if, like, we're going to get into, like, what exactly happens during it. But, like, sitting across from each other, making eye contact, like, I would giggle, I would laugh, I would feel uncomfortable. Like, everyone would to a point. So, like, you got to be with the right person. But I would definitely say for you, you should start with the masturbation stuff. And also, there's nothing wrong with not wanting sensual sex. Like, there's, like, people like different styles of sex. If it's not your thing, even if you didn't respond in the polls, but you say it's too intense for you, like, there's nothing wrong with that.
There's nothing wrong with that, and I get it. Like, I've been there, and if I'm not there right now, like, you know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, let's get into what actually is going down during tantric sex. Are people fucking? Are they massaging? What are they doing, bitch?
Ooh.
I wanted to know. So, tantric sex involves a wide array of erotic activities, not all of which involve the same kind of penetration and physical stimulation of erogenous zones that most people associate with sex. A typical Tantra session involves the subtle realms of sex, including slow embraces, gentle caresses, getting present within the body, and focusing on the movement of energy between the partner's bodies. Sometimes during tantric sex, you're barely moving, and the focus is on the meditative, devotional dimension. So what I've gathered through this is it's all about, moving the energy through your body and then through the other person's body and back to you. It's about the moving of energy. And you can do that just by sitting and, either looking at each other, eyes closed, whatever it may be. So it's not about, getting each other to come. It's about like how you can move this energy and what that feels like.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. And that's so cool because it's like, have you ever like been, I feel like we've talked about this before. Like, have you ever been like kind of like touching someone, chilling with someone, like maybe in public or whatever, where you like kind of have a mini orgasm because like the energy or like the whatever?
No, babe. Or maybe I have, but I'm like, you have orgasms in your ears. Like, you have orgasms everywhere.
In my
like,
mouth, I have, but like, yeah.
What? Like, I'm like, what?
I still can't squirt, though. I really want to learn how to squirt.
But not all women can, so maybe you just can't.
Yeah, I feel like it really is, though, like, centering. Like, you have to be centered in yourself. And, like, I feel like the times where I've been able to, like, feel that energy transfer where it almost feels like you're off Molly or ecstasy where you're tripping and you're, like, feeling the same thing. Because I feel like sex or, like, erotic stuff can really give you that high and that feeling. Like, but you have to be, like, at a state of comfort and like,
yeah, you have to prepare for it. You have to prepare yourself. You have to prepare the space. I mean, there's a lot of preparation that goes into it. Otherwise, it's not going to, work the way you want it to. You have to be like very much present and in there. And again, it's like, it's like it would be like kind of like, maybe you would laugh or whatever, but it's like then it's like it's not going to work because you're not present. You're laughing, which is fine.
Because like with meditation, I know like when I'm just meditating by myself, like they say like, say you're trying to meditate and then you think about, oh my God, I have this work thing to do. You can't like get mad at yourself for like thinking that. You just have to like acknowledge that as a thought and like
and then have it on its way.
Yeah. So like if you're like trying to do this with your partner and you laugh, like I feel like it's like, let that happen and don't feel like awkward. Just be like, this is a new experience. This is a normal bodily reaction and like
this is
keep
part
going.
of it. Part of it is letting go. And if you're holding back laughter, I mean, arguably, maybe that's worse. Like, you gotta let it out.
But maybe you can laugh together first and get that out. And then,
Right. It's, it's the icebreaker. It is, exactly. It's a normal human thing.
Yeah.
I love that. And then, so let's also watch, I went to TikTok as well to try to educate myself and you guys. So let's watch this TikTok together.
I've been waiting my whole life to find someone like you. Find someone like you. Yeah. I've been waiting my whole life to find someone like you. Find someone like you. Maybe I want this to last forever.
If you guys are listening audio-wise, it's pretty much a video of a couple, like they start sitting across from each other, cross-legged, like touching each other's arms, and then like she's on top and they're hugging. Like it's just kind of different positions of like cuddling, but like connecting, like heart to heart, like hands to hands, eyes to eyes kind of thing.
Right. And there's a lot of different ways to do it. But yes, in this situation, they were always touching and connected, which I don't think you always have to be. I mean, a lot of, there's not as much strict rules in stuff like that as there is in like the spiritual energy mental state that you're in. Like that's the most important thing. And we'll get into the goals. Like what do people want to really get out of this experience? And that's what's driving you to do it. It's not, as much the typical sexual stuff like we said at the beginning.
Yeah, and watching it is almost like, especially when they're, because I was talking about the documentary before. It's kind of ick. Like when she was like on top of him and they were like hugging, not as much, but more when they were sitting across from each other.
Yeah, you low-key laughed when we were watching.
Yeah, I did laugh because like I feel like as much as I really do love the sensual sex and all of that stuff, like I also get really uncomfortable in certain moments. Like if we're not on the same wavelength or if it comes up at a time where I'm like off guard, like eye contact and stuff like that, sometimes I'm like, whoa. So like,
for sure. Eye contact is really hard. Like,
especially when you feel like either one, if you're not feeling the same connection as them, because I've definitely had people, when they like eye fuck you or they're like looking at you like they're trying to put their energy onto you and you're like, I'm just not feeling like this is weird. But also if you do have a really like deep connection with them, but you're not like, it's not like out there yet, I'm almost like, oh my God, I'm not like ready type of thing. But yeah, it's kind of cringe to watch a little bit because it's such an intimate moment where they're connecting together and it almost feels intrusive to watch in a way that's different than porn,
It almost does feel intrusive to watch because it is so, special and intimate and vulnerable as fuck. But I'm like, they were just, showing for the camera, whatever. But exactly to watch that on, we thought about going to porn and searching tantric sex. We didn't go in that direction. But I do think that would be.
I know. I imagine if we included that in the episode, but I low-key do. I never watch porn. You guys know this. I talk about it all the time, but I rarely ever watch porn. But low-key, I'm going to look it up next time and try to see something. I don't know. We'll see.
I don't think that would like turn me on, but I also have like my own shit going on.
Right. The dungeons. Yeah.
Okay. So to define tantric sex more, if you relax and take things slowly or ramp up and slow down the action, you can make love for hours and the enjoyment can just keep building. People with penises might also explore practices like edging, getting close to orgasm and backing off, which builds their ability to last longer and hold more pleasure before flipping over into orgasm. That said, all sexual energy can be tantric when done with awareness. Tantric sex can dive into the raw, intense, and animalistic spaces where the body's instinctual intelligence takes over and you are blind to pleasure. Dominance and submission can be tantric as well. Breathwork is central to tantric sex. People might use their breath and awareness to move sexual energy throughout their whole body, awakening their capacity for full body pleasure rather than pleasure localized specifically in the pussy and dick and genitalia.
This whole thing is just so hot to me. But one thing I just want to clarify real quick. People with penises might explore practices like edging, which builds their ability to last longer and hold more pleasure before flipping into orgasm. Women can do that as well, or people with pussies.
I know. It's interesting why it's maybe like, women normally do it anyways. Okay. Or maybe they don't. I don't know.
Yeah, because I feel you. Because I feel like a lot of like guys, and I'm saying guys, but like, people with penises will like bust a nut, like whatever. But I feel like I'd be like doing that. Like I like to like when I'm giving head, like, like go in for a minute and then kind of like back off. Like, like edge and I also them.
Exactly. It's like tease them yourself. Mm-hmm. So it's like, they're like about to, you can sense it and then you stop. Fuck. Okay. Yeah. So, but I think that I do it specifically because the orgasm is better when you do that. Point blank, period. When you withhold it like that, it is 10 times better. And that's why I do it, normally. But it's interesting why they called out people with penises.
Yeah, versus because like
article.
I'll do that when I'm masturbating too. And like I've had like people do that to me. But I like how it's like, focus on your breath and awareness and moving sexual energy. And I think like even if you're not like sitting down, laying down to have tantric sex, you might be doing this, autopilot, just moving your energy sexually. I feel like a lot of sex is energy anyway, but I like the intentionality of it. And also like, cause like you can edge, I feel like, especially as a woman, like your nipples or like other parts of your body can be like erotic or like turn you on in ways where it's like not just your pussy that you're focusing on.
Yeah. I think it's really cool to like go into it with the intention for full body pleasure and not specifically on your genitalia. Like it's the same thing as like the orgasm is not the focus,
Right.
But just for some more, this sex and relationship therapist, her name is Shanta Blue, and she's the co-founder of Blue Counseling and Wellness Center in New Jersey. But she was basically interviewed, and these are some sort of not techniques or more so like positions and, physical things to do during tantric sex. So eye gazing is huge, and it's referred to as soul gazing. This technique is all about establishing connection and intimacy without physical contact. To start, sit face to face with your partner and look directly into each other's eyes. Try not to make any noises or faces at one another and refrain from speaking. So, they all say like the eyes are the center to the soul or whatever. And I truly love that. I think it's really true. I think even when I look at my own eyes really close up in the mirror, I'm
that trips me out
that
when
portal.
I do that.
Yeah. So, and I think, this is a great thing to start. It's like, try not to make any noises. It could take a while for you to, get there, but you need to be able to, sit face to face and soul gaze.
See, I do love eye contact, and I've always been told like in conversations with people that like I have good eye contact. I don't really have a problem with it, whatever. But like when I like have like a lot of like sexual energy with someone and like love them, I feel like sometimes I'd be like, I can't look at them in the eyes right now because it's gonna like
because I'll start fucking crying.
Exactly, because I like love you so much. Like
exactly.
Even the guy,
and I have
like the guy
looked and then cried. Right. So
because I'm just like, you see me, like you have like so much of me, like I'm so vulnerable to you, and like I don't know, like how we be talking about how I like trauma eyes or whatever, but like I feel like it's just like it's more than just trauma eyes, but it's like looking into their eyes as like a portal, and like you can like really see like I think who people are through their eyes. Like I think 100%. The guy I'm fucking with now, like his eyes and his eye contact, I was just like, okay, wait. Like, like,
and especially like being in a state of like intentional, with the intention of having these peaks of spirituality and like imagine what someone's eyes look like during a meditative state. I mean, it's really cool. Another technique is hand to heart circuit, which I guess I've done.
Yes.
But this technique is commonly done after eye gazing. Face your partner, place your right hand over your heart and breathe into your heart. Once you feel love in your heart for your partner, you then place your right hand on each other's heart and your left hand on top of your partner's hand that is touching your heart. Okay, so you're touching each other's hearts, and with the other hand, you're feeling each other's touching of the hearts.
That's so like...
So that's really beautiful. And I think that, you know, it's a lot to do with breathing as well. Like, because whether you can feel the heartbeat or, you know, you would be able to feel the heartbeat.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm like, where's my heart?
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're doing it correctly, you're going to feel their heartbeat. You're going to feel their chest, you know, inflate and deflate. It's super connecting. I love it.
Because I love to like lay on their chest when you can like hear their heart, like even just your ear or your head. And I also like when they lay on my chest, I'm like, oh, you're so vulnerable. Like, you know, like anything with your heart, I feel like just also feels like very intimate.
Yeah. And this can evoke like serious emotion, you guys. I know for me, like it definitely would, especially, you know, I did that with my ex-partner, but we kind of just did it. I don't think I was being really intentional about anything. So I think doing it in a more space like how it should be and like that safe space you create, it would be really emotional. Another technique that Shanta Blue talks about is the tantric massage. Focusing on one partner at a time, give each other a sensual massage with slow, controlled movements. This technique is about emotional intimacy just as much as physical intimacy. The massage should almost be meditative and focus on non-genital areas first, then build up to manual stimulation of the genitals. So I'm really sorry, but I don't like the word genitals.
I don't either.
But I also feel like it's essential to say it because you have people with dick, pussy, you have intersex people. So that's why I'm like genitalia is essential to the conversation.
Yeah.
Why I don't like that word, I don't know, society.
It reminds me of science and like, you know, science class.
Yeah, it's
and
just
whatever.
kind of like, but it is genitals. That's correct. I just don't like the word specifically. So, but yeah, I think it's cool in how it's painting a picture for us. Like the massage can start, you know, on arms
back,
or
like
your, yeah.
Because I've done that. Move. Like, I've done, like, you know, like, butt massages, like, back. I feel like they start with your back and then move to your butt and then move to your pussy. And that is always, like, so nice because, like, you're relaxed. You're chilling. Like, they're just whatever. Like, I'm not the best at giving massages because I have nails. So it's, like, really hard for me to, like, you know. But I love to receive a massage.
Yeah, you don't have nails. You have knives on your hands.
I'm missing one, but yeah.
Yeah. And then the last technique is a position called yab yum position. This technique is a full physical embrace. One partner, the base, sits crossed leg and the other partner sits on their legs, wrapping their legs around their partner's waist and their arms around their shoulders. So you're kind of like in a hug and you're on the floor. In this full embrace position, the two fully connect their bodies and begin to synchronize their breath, Blue explains. Eventually, both partners move together in slow circular movements, activating their sexual energy. Like, I wish I had somebody like cool and fun and hot to do this with because I don't.
But yeah, I've definitely done this before and I love like the position of being on top because I feel like it's like your hearts are connected and also your like genitalia, whatever, is connected as well, like chest and like you're also like by their face, like whatever. But I will say like lately I've been iffy about being on top because I feel like I'm like rusty. But where was I going with this? Oh,
that makes me feel so much better because I definitely feel like I would be rusty as well.
Yeah, I don't even know. I'm not as athletic as I used to be. Like I'm like, okay, you got it.
Like stripper who? I don't know what moves I was doing. Like
I need to get my ass back in the gym. But I was gonna say like with this type of stuff like that, even that position and even being on top for me like during sex feels so intimate, like just like the eye contact, like where you are, like if you're fucking in that position. And that's what I'm talking about when I talked about like the fuck first episode where I was like, I'm iffy about like if I fuck first, because what if the sex is really good and I develop an emotional connection, but I feel like it's because I like the sensual sex. And if we do something like that, like if you do shit like this, you're so much more likely to just like, I feel like create soul bonds or do something. You know what I'm saying? Like
create soul bonds.
Yeah, like I can't really fuck and enjoy it as much, I don't think, with the like dirtier, like degrading, all of that kind of sex, unless I'm really in the mood for it, or it's like with someone I already have like a really like good connection with, like da 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 da, you know?
Yeah. Also, like touching on like the yab yum position, like what you said, being on top, like is vulnerable. Like I totally relate to that, and I also feel like, especially in that position, like one of my biggest insecurities has always been my stomach, and so it's like what it looks like being on top versus me being face down with an arched back.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, of course I'm going to go for that position.
I'm more insecure for being in missionary where I'm on my back, because I feel like when you're like that and they have your legs open and they're over you, like I feel like my stomach looks more crazy then.
But they can't really like, yeah, I get that.
I feel like when I'm on top, like I usually feel pretty confident, but if
your posture's like
if you're
good,
like you can lean back and shit too, or like when they're sitting up, and then you're like
I feel
together.
You. When you're on your back and they have your legs like on their shoulders, like I definitely get insecure, but I love that position so much. I don't even care. That's definitely one of my favorites. But yeah, and I also was gonna say, you know, it definitely can create soul ties, what you're saying, and that's why I think, you know, it's okay to, you know, maybe do this with a one night stand, but it's also, you have to be so careful. And I think sex in general is an energy exchange. Yeah. And this is even more of an energy exchange. So it's like, you do have to be careful. If someone doesn't have the best energy, I mean, that could be, and you can cleanse and it's not the end of the world and everything's fine. But that's something to definitely, you know, consider, is if you want to try this out, like really doing it with someone that is positive and has things going on and is a good state in their life. Yeah. Where they can, you know, offer you something too, you know?
Yeah, because I think the difference with this is that it's deeper than just like sex to get off or sex to have pleasure, sex to feel good. Like once you bring the breathing into it and the mind-body connection and the like eye contact, or like all of that stuff where you're like touching chakras and everything and it's slower and like whatever, that is where it's like they feel like they're touching like a little bit of your soul and your mind a little bit more, so it can be scary.
Yeah, and that's a great natural transition into what we're going to talk about next, is the goals of tantric sex. Because exactly, sex to get off is different, you know? This is not sex to get off. If that's what you're trying to do, this is not for you. But at the same time, if you go through the process and really, you know, do something with it, you can have an amazing, you know, full body orgasm, what have you. So something to keep in mind as well. So let's talk about the goals specifically with tantric sex. So this article says, the purpose of Tantra is to discover an ecstatic union with all of the life beyond the separate sense of self. Sacred or tantric sex, an aspect of Tantra, is seen as one doorway that transcends truth once we learn how to harness it. Mm-hmm. The kind of intimacy evokes your highest self and leaves you overflowing with love. Time slows down, your intuition expands, and you can find yourself in nearly psychedelic realms of orgasmic possibility that you might have only heard about or imagined. So it's about evoking your higher self. It's about spiritual journeys. It's about feeling, you know, connected to someone or yourself that goes beyond the surface level. Ooh. That is what tantric sex is, baby.
I love it. Like, honestly, like, because I've had orgasms before where I've seen like colors.
Here
or
we
like
go. Here we go with the colors in the mouth. Bitch, I'm
Bitch,
so
because I
jealous.
swear to God, like, one, I've had orgasms where I've seen, like, colors, but also, like, have you ever had an orgasm where, like, you almost, like, you know when you're about to pass out? Or, like, I know you've passed out from, like, being choked, like, whatever, but, like, when you're, like, about to pass out or, like, you just, like, got hit in the head or something and you be, like, delusional after. Like, I feel like I've had orgasms where it's, like, I'm coming down to earth. Like, my soul just left my body and I'm, like, coming. And that's
Well,
just,
shit,
like,
bitch. That's
amazing.
absolutely incredible.
So another article said the goal of tantric sex is to achieve spiritual or energetic contact during a sensual experience. This practice is slow and the aim is not always to achieve an orgasm. Instead, it's about feeling a connection either to your partner or to yourself that's both intense and enlightened. It includes breathing, sounds, and movements to activate sexual energy.
So like what we just said, the goal is connection, but not just, connection. It's like a elevated, enlightened, spiritual, transcendent connection. And then bringing it back to Shanta Blue, the same, sex therapist from New Jersey, she says, Tantric sex creates space for you to be vulnerable and shed the weight of frustration, anger, shame, and guilt that you have about yourself or your partner. When we are open to receiving and being vulnerable, we are allowing our partner to see our most authentic self. This is what builds emotional intimacy. So it's like, also, it's like maybe you and your partner are not having a great time, but maybe you really want to be together. You respect each other. You love each other. This could be a way to build emotional intimacy, like she said. And, it's really benefiting for that.
Wait, that actually just made me think of something like non-sex related, but like when I was younger and like me and my brother used to fight, like my dad would make us sit across from each other and stare at each other until we started laughing. Like that was like
You
our
guys
solution.
are so cute.
I know, it low-key is cute. Like I
want
should
to
bring
see
that
little
back.
Fiji like all mad and
No, we would be like all like pissed at each other, and then my dad would just be waiting, and we just start laughing because I really do feel like once you like when you're mad at someone, like your body language is all like whatever. Like maybe you've gone through shit, like maybe they've cheated on you and you got back together. Maybe you have resentments, whatever. Like talk therapy can be really helpful, but I think like the physical, like even just eye contact and like reconnecting that way can help a lot.
Or even if you're, trying to connect sexually. We did an episode 3 weeks ago about fucking first or getting to know each other. I mean, if you are all about getting to know each other and you're willing to work on sexual compatibility, I mean, this could definitely be something to explore. But Shanta Blue also said, skin-to-skin contact releases a bonding and emotional regulation hormone called oxytocin, which Fiji talks about all the time. She loves it. I love it. We love it. AKA the cuddle hormone. Oxytocin is also released when laughing, trying something new, meditating, or showing care for someone else, all of which can occur during tantric sex practice. So exactly like your little, story, like laughing and your dad wanted, like it makes sense. And I think even when doing tantric sex, it's like you could be laughing in the beginning. You're definitely trying something new. You're meditating. This is like euphoria, people. You're doing all of the oxytocin things on top of cuddling and with someone you really love. Like it's super powerful. So I love that. So this article is from Vice.com and we really liked it. And this article was interviewing this woman. I'm sorry if I butcher the name, Mohini Shrishati, who's a 40-year-old teacher of Tantra, Tantric Sex, and all of that. So basically, she said it's truly magical and erotic. Tantric sex is meditative sex, which includes practices such as using breathwork, your own creativity in bed, unlearning your sexual and religious conditioning patterns as a child, and respecting your sexual energy as a means to connect with the divine. So a lot of definitions before this, it's kind of like to achieve enlightening, which that looks different for a lot of people. But I really liked this because specifically, the part about respecting your sexual energy as a means to connect with the divine. I mean, I need that. I need that really bad. as a stripper, like, I feel like I need that. And I think a lot of, unlearning your sexual religious conditioning patterns as a child is huge for a lot of people.
That's huge
So
for
it's like
me,
this
yeah.
person's asking, this teacher, what does this mean? And right out the bat, they is like, it's about unlearning on these conditions. And I just think that's so beautiful. And that's a real, that's what really makes me want to do it, not to just have crazy sex, but to,
Right.
heal from trauma is what it sounds like. And
Yeah, and it feels scary too because like I feel like I can relate to the religious part. Just like, again, if you're listening for the first time, guys, like I was in a lot of Catholic school, Jewish school, raised Protestant, so like there was a lot of religion around me that's very like patriarchal, like not really celebrating women's bodies and their sexuality.
Poor
And I
little
feel
Fiji.
I know. And I started being sexual very like young, I think, and like didn't have as much like
Is she a
autonomy. Yeah, well I didn't have as much autonomy over my sexuality. I think I was like doing things that I didn't exactly like know what I was doing, but also felt a lot of shame for it because everything I was taught was very against it. But like the scary part to me about tantric sex is that I feel like it's really that moment of connecting where it's like it's okay for you to be feeling like pleasure and like you to also be seen as a whole person while experiencing orgasm and connecting with this person and like all of that. And like that seems like a very deeply personal thing that I feel like I can get close to a lot, but also run away from because it's like that voice in the back of your head from your childhood trauma or like whatever that's like, that's uncomfy,
because it's like orgasming is a human experience, but when you think about a woman orgasming, it's not a human experience. It's, a display of sex and lust and all of that.
Right.
So I think doing tantric sex like in that space is a great way to unlearn that, but I do think it's scary. And that's why I put on the polls, it's too intense because I think it would be really intense for me, but at the same time, I think exactly like what you said a little while ago, it's like talk therapy is great.
Yeah.
But this is something that, trauma lives in the body at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So it's like, even when I talk about it to my therapist, I don't really feel like I'm healing. I feel like I need to do some healing in the body, whatever that is. And this is a great way to do it alone or with a partner. And that's all the research is like alone with or with a partner. Like it can be either one. So I think that's awesome. But reading a little bit more, a major element of tantric sex, according to Sri Shati, is thus not just the act itself, but also radically unlearning these biases that act as mental barriers to truly enjoying the act. Anand Kumar, a 28-year-old business analyst who has been practicing tantric sex for the last couple of years, had to work on his guru to unlearn his childhood biases related to shame and self-esteem. I always saw my body as a political space that had too many conditions tethered to it, he said. I was disgusted by my own body hair for the longest time because I was shamed for it by my own siblings. Tantric sex made me fall in love with my own image. So that's what we're talking about a lot too. I mean, it's healing. It's so healing.
Yeah.
And even talking about before when I mentioned, my stomach is an insecurity, it's like in a space like this, hopefully that would be such the farthest thing from my mind. And if it did come into my mind, it's like you acknowledge it, send it on its way, like you said.
One thing that I really liked that he said too was that he saw his body as a political space that had too many conditions tethered to it. And I feel like we can relate as women, but I feel like that's also like a really big thing for like people of color in like America and everything like that. Cause like I know when I was in college and we were talking a lot about like James Baldwin and some other like Black revolutionary thought leaders like talked about, how so much is put onto their body as like a Black man, a Black gay man, a Black woman, like all of those things. So like your body becomes this like political space for people to project onto. And like there's so much like unlearning that you have to do like in your own body, in your own mind. And it can be so healing to do with like another person. So it's the body hair, it's the like rolls, it's the like saggy tits, like I don't know, it's everything. But like you can kind of just have that experience where you're like let go of these societal things and see your body as political and see it as like godly,
Yeah. And then this last part of the article we'll read is, according to Sri Shati, Such conditioning begins early on. You see parents shaming little children even when they touch their own genitals. This is the reason why so many people then grow up feeling guilty and ashamed immediately after they masturbate or indulge in any other act of self-pleasure. And that's what you were saying. It's like just the thought of enjoying pleasure and liking it is something that's so, real for people, especially when you have religion and all of that. So it's like just allowing yourself to feel that pleasure and not feeling guilty is really hard for a lot of people.
Yeah, because I feel like for me, like some of the things that I think about when I was younger is like, obviously, like as a younger girl, like I started to develop earlier. So it's like I got like unwanted sexual attention from my body. But like I also think there was a time once like yoga pants were popular in like 7th grade and like push-up bras and stuff where like I liked to wear things that like accentuated my body and like liked to feel like confident and like sexual and draw attention to my body in certain ways. And I remember like my parents were very, very against that. So like there was always this just like policing of like my sexuality, policing of my body, like my body as something that like threatens people or attracts people for bad reasons and not for something that like I own or something that's like spiritual and healthy. You know?
That's why I feel so lucky that I did like dance classes like consistently. Like I did dance from 4 years old to 18 when I was growing up and then in college. But when I was growing up, it's like we were shaking our hips. You know what I mean? Like I was very like, those stereotypes of, younger girls going to competitions and like racy costumes. It wasn't really like that at my studio. They were very like, the costumes were not racy at all. But we had those moves and like I was able to enjoy that. My mom was, cheering me on in the audience. So it was celebrated. My dad too. Like, so it was great.
And that's the thing, because like I feel like an expression of like your body, like when you're moving it, like when you're dancing, like as a young girl, like you're not. Maybe like as you get older, you're like, oh, this feels like sexual in the way where it feels good and I'm moving my body or whatever. But it's also like a release of like energy and it's exercise and it's movement and all of that. And like what everyone else is projecting onto you is not right. Like I hate when there's like little girls and like dance numbers and they're like, oh, their costumes are too sexual. Because like, okay, like there is a line and some maybe yes, like maybe I'd feel differently if I had kids or whatever. But sometimes I'm like, is it sexual or are you making it sexual? Like your eyes are the object that is making her sexual. Like, you don't know, And
at the end of the day, it's like, I know it's like 4-year-olds twirling around, but it's like dance is art at the end of the day. So it's like, exactly. It's all about, are you the one? Why are you thinking about that? Why are you connecting those dots? And I also think like historically, like dance costumes, it's been like that. Yeah. So whatever. So let's move into our next poll that we asked you guys.
So we asked you guys, do you feel like you are sexually secure enough / ready to try tantric sex? And 83% of you guys said, yes, I'm ready to try it. And only 17% of you guys said, honestly, no, I feel like I need to work on my sexual liberation. And I did vote for yes, but I'm iffy. Like, I will say that, like, while I feel like certain things I am, like, more comfortable with, like, other things, like, I definitely need to work on,
Right. And I think it's like, will you ever, be ready? Like, who knows? But I think there's also levels to it. It can be a very intense experience, but if you're just warming up to it, it doesn't need to be some huge revelation that you're like anticipating. Like, I think just let it be what it is, and it can get intense. So it's just like, be ready for that. Mm-hmm. But I definitely don't think it's something to just like jump into right away. I think you definitely need to build up to it. And
masturbation. Like, I really stress masturbation first. Like, I feel like that's the number one.
See those colors.
Yes. Use that rose,
like
Fiji.
Okay, well, let's move into our favorite part. We're going to talk about tantric sex experiences that we found on the internet from articles, podcasts, some like Reddit type platforms like Quora, like where people just kind of post about their experiences. So we can start with a not so good experience. This is in the same Vice article. And so it was, something that was not so good of a tantric sex experience. I think it's good to see, the good things and the bad things with everything.
Yeah. As with all things seemingly quote unquote exotic, tantric sex is also advertised by teachers who just want to exploit and make a quick buck at your expense. Pallavi Barnwal, sorry if I'm butchering that, is a 39-year-old intimacy coach based in New Delhi, shares how her experience with tantric sex was borderline abusive. He is a very popular guru in this field, she told Vice. In the first online session, which was supposed to be audio only, he wanted to teach me the importance of self-pleasure through a special kind of masturbation called the yoni massage. Barely minutes into the session, he told me to switch on my camera under the pretext of wanting to see how my energy was moving. According to Barnwal, in a country like India where conversations on sex are still widely stifled, any opportunity to liberate yourself through such practices may make you vulnerable to such quacks. Quote, a real guru will never ask you to strip down and offer yourself to him. You don't have to sleep with anyone or reveal yourself to any guru to understand tantric sex.
So this was really unfortunate, obviously. But I think it's like a good, just beware about, people like this on the internet in general. But it's really just disheartening. It was something so sacred and beautiful and worshipped in cultures that, someone would take advantage of someone like this. But I do think it's good to include it because life is not beautiful 24/7. And this is a very beautiful awakening thing. But shit like this does happen, and those voices and stories deserve to be heard as well. And that's why I think, the educator in this was, clarifying that, like, you don't have to sleep with anyone to do this. A professional would never ask you to do anything you weren't comfortable with. So it's like that is true, and we need to all remember that.
Yeah, because this is actually like kind of a common thing. I don't know if it's always attributed to tantric sex, but in a lot of cults or like religions that are bordering on cults, like will kind of use your vulnerability to take advantage of you. Like I've watched some documentaries and stuff where it's like some sort of cult and then like it gets to this place of being like sexual and borderline whatever. And it's important, like, if you've ever been in a situation like that, not to, like, blame yourself because, like, you were vulnerable and this person took advantage of you. Like, even if you did do it at the time and turn the camera on, like, that's, like, like, you were so vulnerable in that moment. You were under the guidance of this person. Like, do not make yourself feel bad about that. But, like, yeah, I do think it's a big thing. Like, I feel like there's such... especially in today's day and age where everybody has an ebook, everybody has a fucking course, everyone is selling readings, like whatever. And there's a lot of very legit people out there. Like both Autumn and I have gotten readings from like legit people before. But like if you're interested in this, I would like be very careful about who you go to because I think there are a good amount of sexual predators in this space.
Yeah, and I think even like some like tarot card readings I've got from people that were real and everything, and I did research on them, like they had a lot of people pretending to be them. So even if you do find a professional, you have people pretending to be them. So it's just, but this other experience is from the Rich and Unemployed podcast, which I really liked this episode. The guest on it was Aki Taylor, who's a digital creator, author, TEDx speaker, wellness activist, founder of Supernatural Women Retreat and Cosmotherapy Retreat, etc. So she's doing a lot. And I did watch the full podcast, but there's also a clip just of this section on YouTube as well. And it's called My Experience with Tantric Sex. So Aki Taylor is talking about her experience with it. And this is, I was listening to the YouTube clip and I wrote down quotes that she said directly. So she said, ultimately it's long and beautiful and enlightening. She said, tantric sex for me was like having an extended meditation that included me going to many, many different depths of my mind, soul, and body. I felt totally out of control when I'm used to being in control. I really surrendered myself to the practice. I wanted to lean into my feminine surrender in the intimate space. I wanted to give in as opposed to trying to get somewhere like an orgasm. So it's about, and this, she was telling this in a conversation. I wrote it down, paraphrased, what she was saying so it would make sense to you guys. But this is, I think the surrender and the femininity. And, we're talking about, you have to prepare for this, take it seriously. You have to surrender to the Tantra. Like, you have to really be in it. So, yeah.
Yeah, and this is like something that I honestly like really struggle with. Like, as much as I say like I like this type of sex and this is the type of sex I have, like I have a really hard time relinquishing my control to like people and like lovers. And I feel like when I have this sex and I'm able to put my like walls down and give myself to them and surrender in the physical way, I have a hard time separating that from the mental way as well. And like we always talk about, like, you know, sex is different from your mind. Like, you can separate these things, like all of that. But like, I think it's important to like say, you know, it's a spiritual feminine surrender, like all of that. But like, that doesn't mean that you're like giving yourself up to this person and you do still have like autonomy after. Like, it seems stupid, but I've run into that a lot where it's like, because I feel like I like have I'm very like control freak and like whatever. When I do relinquish my control, I don't always know the in between, you know?
Right. It's a transfer of energy. That person's giving you energy, you're giving them energy. It's reciprocal, it's equal.
It's being vulnerable.
And you're both surrendering to the Tantra. You're both doing that. So, exactly. I love that. And then, moreover, she did clarify that they were naked during this because the person asking was like, were you naked? It was really funny because the guy that she was telling the story to, he was very relatable because he didn't really know. And I think a lot of us don't know. So it was interesting for him to be like, were you naked during, like, because we all want to know. Were you naked?
Yeah.
Like, I want to know.
Setup? Yeah.
Yeah. So she said it started as a meditation. There was massage involved. And she said, I became in a very meditative state where when we had started being intimate, which means, you know, having more intercourse. She said there was no rush to make each other orgasm. We sensed each other and our energy on another level. As opposed to ejaculation, our goal was to absorb each other's energy and to rotate that energy. What they call the microcosmic orbit, the energy comes through the genitals, through the spine, all the way through the body, and then through your partner's body, creating a figure 8. As if you become one body. I became so deep in meditation, she said, I fell asleep. She said he was like, how long was this?
What?
And she was like, it was an 8-hour session in total. She said, I felt like I had transcended out of my body in a way. So cool, right?
You know what that reminds me of? Have you ever seen that artist? He's on Twitter and Instagram. His name is like Marcus something, but it's always, he like uses colored pencils and it's always like two figures, like usually like cis man, cis woman, like pink and blue. And there's like them transcending energy. Like, I feel like do you know what I'm talking about? No. I had one of his art pieces as my background on my phone screen for a while. I'll send it to you after this and I'll plug it in the description. But like, he draws visuals that literally feel like exactly what she's saying. Like, you guys going into a different dimension together.
Yeah.
Like,
that's awesome. And then the guy in the video, you know, the podcast creator, the Rich and Unemployed podcast that it was on, he was like, did y'all come? That's what he asked.
Yeah.
And she said she did not orgasm, but the man had an inner orgasm. And he was like, what the fuck do you mean? And she's like, he had, you know, in ejaculation as opposed to outward ejaculation. She said he was able to use the energy and circulate the energy as opposed to letting it flow outward. So he didn't come. There was no semen. There was no ejaculation. He had an inner orgasm is how she described it. Because he was like, did you orgasm? She was like, no. And he was like, did he? And she was like, no. Well, not in the way that you think. And then he was like, okay, so in what way? So it was just very entertaining. I
feel that. Like, I know you're going to be like, all right, bitches have orgasms in her nose or whatever. But, like, I feel like I've had orgasms in my heart before. Like, I know you're like, whatever. But I swear to God.
I'm jealous.
But I feel like anyone, I mean, they say that about squirting, but again, have yet to fucking squirt, would love to fucking squirt. But I do feel like I've had orgasms in my heart. And I don't know about my mind. Yeah, but I'm talking more
In
spiritual.
your eyes?
No, not in my eyes. I think in my heart, my mouth, my neck, my nipples, my pussy, and like maybe like my like uterus, like my like what is that? Not your sacral chakra.
Bitch.
My
that's
throat
so
chakra
crazy.
as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. But yeah, this was like, I really recommend you guys go check this out. I thought it was such a raw and real, conversation about this. It was really cool. Okay, so now we're going to share 2 stories from Quora. They're kind of lengthy, but they're really, really cool. So I wanted to include it. I'll read the first one. You can read the second one. It's not as long.
Okay.
Maybe. Okay. This person said, I've been a part of the Tantric community for 7, now 12 years. Huh? That doesn't even make sense. What?
Maybe they
Anyways.
went back and edited it. I don't know.
Yeah. The ideas I associate with Tantra affect all of my sexual expressions. In my experience, Tantra is not about specific sexual practices. It's about how one approaches sensuality and spirituality. Many religious traditions seek to disconnect people from their sexuality and sometimes from their physical bodies. One of the meanings of the Sanskrit word Tantra is to weave. We talked about this. The idea for me is that rather than attempting to separate the spiritual and the carnal, Tantra seeks to weave them together. Instead of treating sex as a necessary evil, Tantra sees sexuality as a part of a spiritual practice. Many people in my community are both tantric and polyamorous. Their polyamory is informed by the sex-positive perspective of Tantra. Energetic sex has become a significant part of how I experience my sexuality. I have experienced both giving and receiving energetic orgasms without any sexual contact. However, it is much more common for me to involve energetic sexuality as a part of my other sexual practices. It enriches and deepens the experience for me and my partners. And no, I don't believe that there is such a thing as Kundalini energy, but I do experience things that fit the general discrimination. Mindfulness is also a part of my sexual practice. Mindfulness is about being fully conscious of what you are experiencing in the moment. When I can mindfully experience a touch, a kiss, a sensation, it can transform them from steps in a progression towards orgasm to individual moments of bliss and transcendence. My experience of Tantra is not a pure tantric practice, but Tantra is woven into all of my sexual practices. So I think this person uses Tantra in a lot of aspects of their life and not necessarily having full tantric sex, but always kind of being mindful during sex is like, I don't think I do that every single time. Like sometimes I'm thinking about something else. Sometimes I'm like really focused on the role play, like to be mindful and be like, what does my leg feel like right now? What does my ear feel like right now? Like that, to really be mindful of yourself and your pleasure. That's huge. That's not your everyday, hit the sack.
Yeah, no, it like 2 things on this. Like one, when she said that like it's part of her everyday like sexual expressions and experiences, it made me for some reason think of like dance or like pole dancing, because a lot of times when I've never been a dancer like when I was like fucking 5, but like when I watch dancers, like it feels like it's a very like spiritual, like there's sexual energy, like because you're moving your body, like it's like beautiful and very like connected. So like you could bring it into that.
And you can get euphoria from dancing. You can definitely from moving your body certain ways. I've felt that high. It's so cool.
Yeah, no, I watch it and I'm like, bitch, I wish I could fucking do that shit. But the other thing I was going to say is she talked about Kundalini energy. And do you know what that is?
I did through research. I didn't know what it was before this.
I love this. Like, I would do, like, meditations on this. So pretty much, if you guys don't know, like, Kundalini is, like, the idea that you have this, like, snake, kind of, in the bottom of you. And, like, when you do meditations, it, like, goes all the way up to, like, kind of, like, align your chakras type of thing. But, like, when I would meditate, a lot of the times, I did a lot of chakra healing meditations where it's, like, you start at your root chakra, and then you go up to your sacral chakra, like, extended to your crown. And I feel like it's a way of like connecting the mindfulness of like your whole body. So like even if you're like feeling one thing and like maybe your like leg hurts, like I would have like situations where I would like, oh, like you feel pain, but you do this meditation where you're aligning your chakras and you kind of feel as one and it feels like cleansing. Again, not saying that like all of this spirituality practice can be like replaced with modern medicine, because I do think like modern medicine is important and people like go down that route. I don't completely believe that, but like I do think like chakra healing, kundalini energy, and it's interesting that she says she doesn't feel that specifically, like not everybody does, but for me I found it really healing.
Yeah, and I also think that it was interesting that, you know, the polyamorous community is turned on to Tantra because it's so sex positive. I thought that was really interesting too. We've done some episodes on being open and all of that. But yeah, I just wanted to include it because as you can see, it's like everyone has, you know, their own experience with this. And I really like also how this person said, like, a lot of religions teach you to not be in tune with your sexuality. And this sort of, you know, spiritual practice is the exact opposite of that. And I think that's awesome. But let's read one more.
I experienced it for the first time recently. I believe that it can only occur when both people are equally open-hearted and open-minded and on the same spiritual, physical, and psychic wavelength. It's one of the most enlightening and transcendental experiences a person can have. Pleasure deepens and compounds, elongates until you're in an all-engulfing ecstasy with your partner. You don't have to be a spiritual guru or even be taught by a guru. You don't have to follow a ritual or practice or have to try for years before experiencing it. You have to just surrender and open your soul to the many waves that are Tantra. Both partners are able to fluidly interchange the feminine and masculine energy within themselves and in sync with their partner like a dance. Once you are in sensual trance, it's a bit like having a high experience where you have to ride it out because something powerful overtakes you.
That's what you said.
Yeah.
Like doing drugs.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying, because like I feel like there's a part when you're having this tantric sex where it's like you're gonna feel uncomfortable. Like you're letting someone into your mind, body, like it's this loop. And you're opening yourself up. Like you're gonna have
8.
Yeah, and I feel like a lot of trips that I've been on, like you reach the, because you're opening up, you know, new receptors in your brain, like whatever, new ways of thinking, and like you're gonna hit something like uncomfortable, but you have to like ride it out.
Which is why I've always been turned off. I've never done psychedelics. I've never done shrooms. Molly Ecstasy can speak on that for show.
Yeah.
But I've been scared, exactly what you just said, because I'm like, I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to do that. But it can be, but I mean, that's a whole other conversation. But psychedelics, it's like it can be so great, and then it can also be really bad.
I mean, it can also be scary because I do have like people
like
that
Russian
I know that
roulette,
never came back from trips and like were permanently iffy.
Like
but
our friend from college, we used to say, I don't think she ever
came back from her trip. Multiple people. Like I know a guy that used to like talk really in weird sentences. Like he never really like fully came back. But for me, one of my trips, I literally think changed my life and made me like get on my shit and all of that. So like it can be iffy. I feel like the only thing I would probably do is like microdose shrooms. And you know,
me too. My roommate and I talk about that. She really wants to do it.
Yeah, and
like
I feel like
outside,
shrooms is
camping.
more natural. If you're gonna do like anything with this, you know, I would say shrooms versus anything else. But anyway, I think part of the tantric pleasure comes through the repeated transcendence of your physical energy. Although you might be exhausted and think you have nothing left, the tantric trip compels you to have the surge after surge of new energy that brings you even closer to a kind of blissful collapse in mind and body. You are constantly surprising yourself at each sequential elevation of your potential. You will have full body orgasms that you never thought were possible. It changes the way you observe the world around you. I also want to add that Tantra is more than just suddenly feeling horny, doing some foreplay, and then proceeding to have sex, but rather an underlying current that drives underneath constantly. And that energy force that we bring to Tantra is built over many hours, days, or even weeks, months, or years. There is no time in higher dimensions, so this energy remains present and only remains to be accessed, even outside of the act of sex.
Hello. People really be writing full ass essays on Reddit and Quora and sites like this. But I'm like, and I don't know who this person is. It's a random person online, but
Right.
this experience, you know, is real for them, and this is their point of view. And whether we agree with everything they said or not, I mean, it's really fucking cool and it's educational. And I love how they said it's like a dance. I love,
Yes.
you know, the full body orgasms, you know, and even the last part about there's no time in higher dimensions, and it's just so cool. It's like, if you're, for someone like me, and like sensual sex does scare me. I use that as my intro for a reason for this episode.
Yeah.
Because of, you know, just a lot of different reasons it scares me. But I think I'm someone that loves spirituality. I very much believe that what we see is not all that's really there.
Yeah.
I believe in other dimensions. I believe in other realities living amongst the realities we're in right now, and that, you know, different decisions can alter realities and all of that. And I'm sex positive. So it's like, this seems like something so great for me. But I think going in, like, this would be something I would decide to do when I'm ready to really heal. And I think it would be beneficial for me to do it by myself. I
Yes.
think with a partner, it can obviously be healing for so many different things. But I think for me, I would choose to do this with a partner, you know, to kind of do maybe some conflict resolvement, or maybe to connect more if we feel like we aren't connecting. But I think the healing from sexual trauma, I think I need to do that by myself
Yeah.
to really, you know, do it. So.
Yeah, I really like what they said too about the currents, because, like, you know, 80% of our body is water or whatever, and I've always, obviously, my name's Fiji, like, my
Hello.
government name
Water
is very
sign.
tied to water. My family's all water signs. Like, I've always felt very, like, connected to water. And like 80% of our body is water, like water currents. And I like to think of it like sometimes like with emotions, how it's like, you know, waves, like they have high tide, they have low tide, like things are moving. And I think when you're experiencing or going through like tantric sex, it's like following those waves and riding those waves, like even when it's uncomfortable and stuff. So I really like that metaphor, you know?
And just the idea of combining meditation with sex in general is fucking cool. And I think a lot of people in our generation that are into spiritual things would really, really vibe with this. Maybe they don't know what it is. Maybe they do. But I just think it's so fucking cool. And I definitely think, you know, as people, like, we need to separate, you know, sex from human beings, because people look at porn stars and they dehumanize them. You know, people look at certain races and sexualize them even more because of their race. Like, there's all of that going on in our society. But this is like, you know, a way to connect human experiences to sex in a way that's not about getting off, that's not about objectification. So I think, you know, our society could learn a lot from this in general.
Yeah, because sex is diverse. Like, love is diverse. And I don't mean just with like genders and like skin colors or whatever, but like the types of love and the types of sex. Like, you can enjoy some like degrading, nasty sex, but like you can also enjoy some spiritual sex. And I feel like there's this stuff that's pushed a lot in society where it's like, you know, you should only be having spiritual sex, or like a level of spiritual sex that's very tied to Christianity and marriage. But this feels like a lot more inclusive and open and accepting feminine and masculine and like healing your trauma. Like, it feels like a safer way to experience that spiritual aspect of sex that a lot of people like long for, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just in general, like, it's important when, you know, talking about tantric sex and tantra, we do remember where this comes from, which is India. And there's a lot of people on YouTube and TikTok and us, white people, talking about it. So I think that, you know, that's when you're doing your own research. It's like, I wanted to go from people that it was their culture. Yeah. Because of course you can be a successful, you know, tantric sex educator and not be Indian, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think if you want to get the realest and most raw and genuine, you know, definition or what this really is, like, you should take it from people who are, you know, either practice Hinduism, Buddhism, like what we said at the beginning. So that's just important as we wrap up to like remember where this comes from and to honor that. This is like, you know, a new idea and a new sex thing for a lot of us. But for some people, this is really, really
Part of their culture.
sacred to their culture. So that's not something to mess with. And it's like, it's sacred sex. It's, you know, like it's ceremonial. It's everything. It's healing.
Yeah, like you can take like parts of it, like these stories, and like do what you want with it. But like when you're talking about where it comes from, like give credit and all of that. Because like, I think of like Gwyneth Paltrow with what is it? Goop? Is it Goop? Her like spiritual shit, like where she sells like all these whatever. Like I think of someone like her, like white woman teaching all this stuff, and like I don't know, I don't pay attention to her stuff that much, but like people don't always like give credits to that stuff. So like definitely want to stress that like we did not come up with these ideas. Like
and that's why we started with that at the beginning. We always start with brief history to know where things come from, and I think, you know, we're learning alongside with you guys. So we're not claiming to be masters at this at all. I didn't even know what this was before the episode. I, you know, found research from people that this was their culture, and then also other people too. So just remember that. Like, we're learning too, and we're not going to get everything right.
Yeah.
So let's get into our listener stories. We didn't have too much for this episode, and I think that largely has to do with the fact that the majority of our audience didn't know what this was. But people did submit. So this first listener said, I want to try it, but I think I'd laugh, which is funny because that's what you said right at the beginning.
Yeah.
And like we came to that conclusion, laughing is cool. You got to let that shit out. If you don't laugh it out, you're not going to get to the, you know, the part that you want to get to where you're serious and in tune with everything. So you got to laugh sometimes.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable for a reason. And that's kind of like the next one too. Someone said, I feel like I need to heal my trauma before I try it because I think it would be so intense I'd end up crying. And I would say the same thing, like ride that wave. Like if these emotions are coming up for you, don't try to squash them because then you're going to be out of it. Like then you're going to be anxious and you're going to be focused on like trying to stop the crying, trying to control the feeling. Like you need to just like let yourself like breathe through that. Like that's okay. It's okay to cry, you know?
Same thing with laughing. It's like it's a human thing. And I would definitely imagine that a lot of crying takes place during this. And we have to remember that crying doesn't always happen because people are sad.
Yes.
Crying happens because you're frustrated, because you're overenjoyed. So it's like there's lots of different types of crying. It doesn't automatically mean that you're sad. Some people just cry when they feel a lot because it's overwhelming and you need to get that out, and your body's choosing tears for that in that moment. So
and you can be happy and crying too. Like it could be an ecstasy moment, like
like crying from happiness is so real, especially if, you know, you're having an earth-shattering orgasm you've never experienced, going into intergalactic dimensions.
Right.
I would imagine I would need like a cry after. I don't know.
Yes.
This next person said, I've done it and I'm not with the partner I've done it with anymore, but I honestly feel like we both grew so much from that experience. Which I think is really cool. Like, again, you don't have to do it with your end all be all. And I think even if they're not together, like they'll always remember that moment that they had and maybe, you know, do it with other partners. And so I think that that's really cool.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful because I think I feel like a lot of us have some sort of like abandonment wounds, like abandonment fears, like all of that. So it can like prevent you from wanting to like open up and be vulnerable and do this type of sex. But like it is like good. No, I feel the same way. I feel the same way too. Like honestly, because it's like, I feel like I've had close experiences with people, but that aren't in my life anymore. And at the time when you're like breaking up or like whatever, it's like, oh my God, I had this like amazing spiritual connection with this person and they're gone. Like you feel like you're losing half of you. But at the same time, like if you appreciate that for like the moment and the growth that you got from it and like the learning experience, like you can take that, you know, with you into your life and your next relationship and like look at it as like a memory and not something that you're like tied to forever.
Right. And as much as it was an experience you shared together, you also had your own experience within that.
Right.
That is healing and allowing you to grow with or without that person. That's, you know, the whole thing. So I love that.
Beautiful.
Next
Next
one. Your turn.
one. Yeah, someone said, just wanted to let you know this is a really good topic. You educated me a little bit because we put the definition on our story. They said, I've done some techniques that falls under this category before even knowing, and also not doing it to the full extent, which is what we talked about. Like, I realized through researching this episode, through like reading the outline and everything, like I was like, oh, like I have done this. And I didn't even think of masturbation because like that is so big for me. I'm like, oh, like, you know, and it's not always intentional. Like I said, like sometimes I would meditate and I would like be like, oh, like I want to masturbate right now. Like it's just something that's happening. So
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. Like if it happens like that, like let it happen. Think about it after. Be like, oh, I liked this. Maybe I want to do more of this. Whatever.
Right. This next listener said, I'm really spiritual. Like if you have sex with someone, their energy inside you for 3 years. Oh shit. They're saying if you have sex with someone, their energy is inside you for 3 years. And I honestly think that's why I've been having vagina issues, because she name dropped someone. So because John Doe's energy is still in there like a leech. So obviously this is an ex-boyfriend. I want to do tantric and connect more with her new boyfriend, because I think we also have relationship wounds. We can heal through this and build trust. Yeah, so it's like your new partner and you both have old relationship wounds that, you know, you're not still fucking with them, but they're still there. You can both, you know, heal from that together. I think that's really cool. And especially because like, I feel like a lot of times, like I've been in new relationships where I was over the person, but I still, exactly, it's like you still have those emotional wounds. And I always wanted someone to, you know, be with me and like we could burn the letter. It's like, but jealousy gets in the way and it's like, oh, but why are you still caught up about this other person? And that's why I'm like so inclined for polyamory, because that wouldn't really be a thing. So
yeah.
But anyways, I think that's really interesting. You can heal separately while doing it with your partner too.
Yeah, and like it's interesting that she said that their energy is inside you for 3 years, because this is something that we talked about.
Bitch.
No, yeah, this is something that we've talked about, and like I feel mixed about it. Right, because I think it's definitely a thing where it's like you create your own reality, you manifest. But yeah, we kind of talked about this in our period sex episode, and we were pretty much just saying like it's about your mind and like how you decide what you decide to do with it. Like you could maybe have soul ties with this person, but like you can like kind of get rid of those on your own. And I'm like iffy about this because I do feel like people's energy stays inside of you. Like I do genuinely feel that way. But I also feel like that's also a common like narrative that society uses to like sexually shame people and make people feel bad about themselves. But like for me, like especially because I did have like an abusive ex and whatever, and like I did love him and all that stuff, I had a really hard time. Like I felt his energy in my body like constantly, like when we weren't together and like after we had broken up and stuff. And like for me it was the most healing to like do that stuff like through masturbation, like cry it out, like feel it out, feel the kundalini energy, like your chakras and everything. So like I think like I do believe that energy stays, but I do believe that we have control over it and like can expel it and can like digest it in a way that doesn't need to take 3 years, you know?
I couldn't agree. I mean, I couldn't agree more. That's the simplest thing. It's like, yes, energy stays, but we have control over it. You can cleanse yourself and all of that. And I think a lot of sexual assault survivors, it's so hard for them because exactly they can feel them, their abuser, you know, inside them, on them, around their body. And that's huge. So I definitely am glad that you brought that up, because that's very real. And, you know, I think about it. I'm like, maybe when I had a bad one night stand, like that's why I was so depressed the next day, because their energy was in me, like on a, you know, lighter note. So we all could kind of feel that. But yeah, that is it for our listener stories for this episode. So now we're going to go into our wrap up segment where we talk about what we're wet, dry, and maybe still confused about the topic. So tantric sex, Fiji, Would you like to start?
Sure. I guess I'll say that I'm very wet about learning more about tantric sex and like where it comes from with like Buddhism and Hinduism and all of that, like the history of it and also other people's experiences because, you know, when you hear other people's stories, it helps put it into perspective and like use cases, as they say. I'm definitely wet about like, because sometimes I feel iffy about the fact that I do like sensual sex and like where I place that, especially when I'm not in a relationship, because it can be kind of scary. But like I do feel like for me, sex and physical touch and like intimacy has always been a place for me to open up vulnerably. So I really like that, and I really like that there's a form and there's like religion and spirituality behind all of that so that like I can learn more about it and like feel more sexually liberated, heal trauma, all of that. So I'm pretty much just wet about the whole topic, honestly.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I'll add to, like, I'm definitely wet about, you know, not only the enlightening that can happen when you have tantric sex, but also the unlearning, like you
Yes.
said, of like the religions and, you know, unlearning of um, allowing yourself to feel pleasure as a woman. I think all the research for the episode is from a lot of different perspectives, which I thought was really important. And I liked it. And I think everyone has, and I really like, you know, taking what resonates with you and leaving what doesn't. I think there's so many varieties that you can do. And at the end of the day, it's like this type of sex is just promoting people to connect on a different level. And we all know, we've talked about it before on this podcast, how social media, technology, everything's so surface level, everything's so transactional.
Yeah.
We like stopped caring about humans. I don't know. So this is just like a cool way to look at sex that is very different than when we're taught sex to be in the United States, and just like growing up. I would say for dry, what am I dry about? I mean, I would say I'm dry about, you know, my inability to kind of allow myself to have sensual sex and my, you know, I'm really so scared of crying during it, but why is that so bad? You know,
Yeah.
that's nothing to be afraid of. I think I really want to practice some mindful masturbation because I know Fiji said she doesn't watch a lot of porn. I definitely do. And I'm not being mindful when I'm masturbating and I'm just wanting to orgasm. That's the goal. So I want to practice something where that's not the goal and maybe the orgasm will be better. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel that because I feel like I'm dry too about parts of the vulnerability because it is scary and it's an uncomfortable place, but I'm trying to like learn how to be wet about those things and kind of like ride the wave.
Cute.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I would also say I'm dry about like just how much of like, especially in America, like we're pushed all of this like very Western culture and like very like Catholic Christian culture, all of that. And like there are so many other options for spirituality, but like also the way that we get them is through white women, which, you know, we are as well, or through people that don't give it as much credit or are teaching it wrong or like, I don't know. And I guess that's kind of tied into what I'm confused about as well, because like when it comes to practices, like this is very tied to a religion and a spirituality that's very different from like the religious background that I grew up from. So I think it can be very like liberating and like open my eyes, and it has in a lot of senses. But at the same time, like I am always like a little bit conflicted when like you are practicing like other cultures, other religions, and like ways to like do it justice and not like disrespect it and all of that. And I think like in most of like Jay Shetty, I don't know if you guys know who he is, but he's like, he was a Buddhist monk for a long time. He has a podcast called On Purpose, and I also read his book. But like he preaches these Buddhist teachings as like just like mindful ways to live. And I think that that is like, you know, we can take, like you said, from each of these religions, but also still pay respect to where it comes from and not appropriate it, you know? So like a little confused about how to do that, but yeah.
Yeah. I think it's definitely confusing. I mean, I would say it's like the most important thing is just knowledge and to know and to not, you know, yeah, it's really, it's difficult. I think learning from people where it is their culture
Yeah.
is the way to go. I think that's honestly the best thing to do. I don't really know much of what I'm confused about, but I would say, like, as a lesbian, as a queer person, I feel like I should have known about this, because it really is, like, I feel like the lesbians I've been friends with and dated, whatever, it's like we're very into, finding overly connecting and things like that. I think doing this with a woman would be a lot more impactful. Well, maybe doing it with a man would be more impactful and healing, because my sexual trauma comes from men, not women.
Right.
Maybe.
But it is
But
still
I don't know.
masculine and feminine energy, like,
Yeah. Oh, well, I guess I'm confused about, like, how to know, like what's, because I know you said, like, with one night stands you can do, like, glimmers of this and, like, dabble in it, but it's
Right.
like, when do you know if someone's, like, safe enough to do this for real with? And I feel like it's like, if you love them, if you just have that feeling, like, you'll know. So that can be confusing as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because, like, I feel like I always struggle with, like, boundaries and, like, not, like, just with other people, but, like, setting my own boundaries, like, with other people. And, like, because I like this type of sex, like, in the past, I'm like, I can get it confused, like, especially
Right.
when it's mind, body, whatever. But yeah, I'm leaning towards it should be someone that you have, like, more of a deep connection with. And I'm honestly, like, I feel like I really want to do this with my current partner, so I'm very wet about that.
She's already texting him, y'all. Yeah. She's already on it. But yeah, I guess that about does it for this episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. Seriously, if you made it to this point, we love you. If you only made it 10 minutes through, we still love you. Please subscribe and follow whatever platform you're on. We're also on other platforms. We're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Castbox, Podcast Addict, iHeartRadio. Wherever you stream podcasts, you can find us at So Wet, So Dry. The O's are zeros. And like I said, we do post polls for every episode. So to be a part of that, you do have to follow us on Instagram. We post it on our stories. So yeah, follow us over there too.
Yes, please share with a friend, all of that stuff. If you guys are listening on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever, there's an opportunity to rate. Please rate us 5 stars if you really like this episode. Also, if you're listening on Spotify, and even if you're not, in the bottom, in the description, very, very bottom, scroll past the sources, all of that stuff, there is a link for listener support. It's $9.99, $4.99, or 99 cents a month. This really helps us get better equipment, trips to see each other, and produce just vlogs for you guys, TikTok skits, other styles of content. We love you so much. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and we will catch you in the next one. Bye.
Bye.
But I do also want to say, like, these are kind of negative examples of, like, clinginess and what it actually is and why it's bad. But there is this whole trending thing kind of on TikTok and Twitter and everything where people are like, no, I want my partner clingy. Like, I want to be by their side 24/7. Like, I need to go through their phone, and kind of, like, normalizing this, like, codependent behavior. So it gets weird, because it's like, this is actually kind of a toxic relationship, and it's encroaching on your partner's boundaries, personal space, identity, like, all of that. But people literally want these types of relationships.
Because toxicity is fucking romanticized OD, bro.
Yeah.
Like...